Christmas reactivates family memories that were stored in the body as silent defense. The sacrum locks, the pelvis compresses, the breath shortens for no clear reason when you simply imagine a full house. Familiar faces, a return to the field where old traumas still live as deep tension. This contraction is not ordinary nervousness that fades with relaxation techniques or willpower. It is a deep somatic memory reactivating a defense that was installed decades ago, when the body learned to protect itself in the only way it knew at that time. There is a Christmas ritual that ancestral traditions used specifically during this period to heal trauma at the root. This practice must be done until the 24th day, because after that, the family field is already active and the base has been pulled back into roles and defenses that consume all available creative energy. You are about to learn why the sacrum holds records that no cognitive therapy can reach, and why Christmas specifically reopens this window of bodily memory with surgical precision. Closing this video right now means missing the exact moment when your body will begin to recognize that the cycle can end, that the contraction can soften, and that the structure can finally settle without needing to carry the past. What happens at the root when the cycle closes is about to be revealed. The base of the body is not just the bone structure that keeps you standing. It is the living archive where the nervous system records the earliest experiences of safety or threat in the relational field, turning every moment of rejection, every heavy silence, every disapproving look into muscle tone, defensive posture, and breathing patterns that persist for decades. When a child learns that crying leads to abandonment, that asking for attention triggers irritation, that expressing need creates distance, the body does not simply store the information. It reorganizes the root to contain the impulse before it reaches the surface, installing a deep rigidity that becomes the very structure of survival. Ancient somatic traditions recognize the pelvic region as the cauldron where undigested emotions turn into physical density. Mystery schools taught that the base of the body literally carries the weight of what was not felt, what could not be expressed, what had to be swallowed to preserve connection. This wisdom did not come from theory, but from direct observation of how chronic emotional containment hardens the sacrum, locks the pelvis, and creates a rigid root that prevents vital flow from circulating freely through the body. What these traditions perceived intuitively, polyvagal theory now describes with neurophysiological precision. Cues of danger and safety are encoded in the autonomic nervous system as automatic responses that fire before any conscious thought. Physical presence in the family field where the trauma formed reactivates this defensive map at a speed the mind cannot keep up with. The body recognizes the tone of voice, the demanding look, the silent dynamics of old roles, and immediately activates the same protection it used 20, 30, or 40 years ago. Neuroscience has discovered that intense relational contexts increase activation of the limbic system and reopen windows of neuroplasticity, temporarily bringing the body back to the permeable state of childhood. This explains why Christmas does not simply remind you of the past, but recreates in the body the same autonomic state present when the trauma was installed. The sacrum locks, the pelvis closes, the breath rises into the chest, and a constant sense of alert takes over, as if the old danger were happening right now. The rigidity you feel when you think about Christmas is not weakness of character, nor a lack of forgiveness or emotional maturity. It is somatic memory asking for containment, as if the danger from 3 decades ago was still alive, as if releasing the base would mean total collapse. There is someone who lived this reactivation year after year until discovering how to use Christmas as a window for root healing, not emotional exposure. What this person found will illuminate why the base holds what no cognitive therapy can reach. Deborah was 53 years old and worked as a pharmacist in a drugstore chain in the suburbs of Melbourne. Her routine was predictable. The days blended together. But every month of November, something shifted in her body before it shifted on the calendar. Her sacrum began to lock weeks before Christmas. Her pelvis lost mobility, her breathing moved up into her chest, and a growing irritability took over for no apparent reason. She could not relax when thinking about the holiday dinner, the full house, the familiar faces that brought back a diffuse feeling of always being on the edge of exploding or freezing. The fatigue did not improve with rest, and a constant tension settled into her body as if something bad were about to happen, even though she knew rationally there was no real threat. Deborah had already tried cognitive therapy, which helped her understand family patterns but did not dissolve the reactivity her body was holding. Breathing techniques worked temporarily, but the rigidity returned within a few hours. Physical exercise eased the symptoms without healing the cause. And every December she arrived at the Christmas dinner exhausted, contained, and disconnected from herself. While researching Christmas traditions in ancient cultures, Deborah came across an obscure reference in an anthropology book about closure practices during the winter solstice. The text mentioned that ancient peoples treated Christmas as a sacred time for root-level healing, not superficial celebration. There was a specific ritual that had to be done until the 24th day, before the family gathering, to dissolve traumatic memories stored in the sacrum through directed breathing, subtle pelvic micro-movements, and a bodily sealing gesture that closed old cycles. Deborah decided to try it on the night of the 22nd day of December, alone in her bedroom with the house still quiet. She lay down, brought her attention to her sacrum, and began to breathe consciously toward the base, lengthening the exhale and allowing the air to descend to the pelvic floor. In the first few minutes, nothing happened beyond mild discomfort and internal resistance. But then, for the first time in years, she felt something give way. A gentle pulsation in the sacrum, a soft warmth spreading through the pelvis, and a clear sense that the rigidity was beginning to release. What Deborah discovered in that moment is the same thing your body is about to experience now. Breathing is the only function of the body that moves between the automatic and the conscious, which is why it serves as a direct bridge to reorganize what is locked at the root. When you consciously direct the breath to the sacrum, you are sending chemical and mechanical signals to the nervous system that there is no immediate threat that the base can release without collapsing. This is the principle behind the Christmas ritual used by ancient traditions to heal trauma at the root, and it is exactly what you are about to apply in your own body. Find a place where you can stay for a few minutes without interruption. There is no need for formal posture or a prepared environment, just a space where the body can rest without having to maintain external vigilance. Lie down or sit in a way that allows the spine to be supported and the pelvis to relax without effort. Close your eyes if that helps bring attention inward, or keep a soft gaze if you prefer. Set an inner intention of closure, recognizing that this is a time to close old cycles before Christmas, not to relive them. Bring all your attention to the sacrum, the triangular bone at the base of the spine. Notice the weight of this area against the surface supporting you. Observe whether there is warmth or coolness, rigidity or mobility, subtle tremors or complete stillness. Do not force anything. Simply observe how the body is holding this area right now, in this moment. The language of the body is sensory, and the sacrum speaks through tension, density, temperature, and subtle vibration. Now begin to breathe consciously into the base. Inhale through the nose naturally, without forcing depth, and on the exhale, extend the time, letting the air descend slowly to the pelvic floor, as if the breath could reach the sacrum from the inside. Let your attention rest in this area as the air moves downward. Repeat this for a few cycles, allowing each exhale to be slightly longer than the previous one, without creating effort, only softness. The body begins to recognize that this lengthening of the out-breath is a signal of safety, not danger. As you keep the breath directed, introduce pelvic micro-movements that are almost imperceptible. Very small rocking of the sacrum, forward and back, subtle rotations of the pelvis. Adjustments so minimal that someone watching from the outside would not notice. These movements mirror the natural patterns of traumatic discharge the body uses when it feels safe enough to complete survival responses that were interrupted. Do not force range or intensity. Let the movement arise from the breath itself, like gentle waves rocking the base. Notice where changes begin to appear. It may be a reduction in compression in the lower back, a soft pelvic warmth spreading outward, the breath descending effortlessly where there was once a block, a release in the perineum you did not even realize was held. It may also show up as a fine tremor, an involuntary sigh, or simply the sense that something dense is starting to loosen. All of these are valid responses from a body that is beginning to reorganize, defense at the root. Before moving into the next layer of the practice, there is something essential about Deborah that needs to be revealed now. Because what happened to her is exactly what is beginning to happen in your body at this moment. Deborah continued the ritual that night, breathing into the sacrum and allowing the micro-movements. And for the first time in decades, she felt the base of her body settle without having to sustain alertness. What she understood in that moment did not arrive as a thought, but as direct bodily perception. The trauma did not need to be relived in detail, retold in therapy, or processed mentally. It needed to be reorganized at the root, where it had fixed itself as tone and posture. And the body knew how to do this on its own when it received the right signals of safety. 2 days later, on Christmas, Deborah arrived at her family's house with a loose pelvis for the first time in years. The rigidity that always announced the holiday dinner had released, and what once triggered automatic reactivity now met presence. She was able to sit at the table without locking her jaw, without shortening her breath, without feeling the need to defend herself from something invisible. The conflicts that usually erupted on that day simply did not happen because her body was no longer in chronic defense, seeking external validation for an internal alarm. The energy that had been consumed by containment began to circulate again, and in the days that followed, Deborah noticed a creativity and vitality she had not felt in a long time. What Deborah felt on the night of the 22nd day of December, and confirmed on the 24th, is exactly what you are beginning to notice now. The base releasing, the cycle closing, somatic memory finding, reorganization, without the need for mental narrative. Your body is doing the same work hers did, and the next layer of the ritual will seal this transformation so it remains. Now that the base has begun to release through breathing and micro-movements, it is time to seal what has been freed. Place one hand over the lower abdomen, just below the navel, and the other hand behind you, reaching the sacrum as best you can. If you cannot reach the sacrum directly, rest the hand on the lower back. What matters is creating a gentle holding circuit between the front and back of the pelvis, as if you were embracing the base of the body from inside and outside at the same time. Maintain this touch while breathing naturally, without forcing rhythm or depth. Notice how this simple gesture tells the nervous system that the cycle has ended, that the body is safe, that it can integrate what was released without entering defensive rebound. The touch is steady but gentle, supporting the area without compressing it. offering presence without intrusion. Stay like this for a few breathing cycles, allowing the warmth of the hands to enter the pelvis, the attention to remain anchored at the base, and the sense of settling to deepen. Directed breathing brought oxygen and movement to where there was rigidity. The micro-movements completed survival responses that had been interrupted for decades. The sealing gesture now integrates these two layers, creating a complete somatic ritual of closure. Together, these three elements form the Christmas ritual that ancestral traditions used to heal trauma at the root, and that you have just applied in your own body before the 24th day. The central practice is complete. What comes now is the return protocol, the tool you will use over the next few days whenever you feel rigidity trying to come back, ensuring that the closure remains even when the family field is active. The physical marker that proves the transformation has occurred is happening right now in your body. The breath descends effortlessly into the pelvis, where there was once a block. The sacrum settles with a gentle weight, without the defensive rigidity that sustained constant alertness. The jaw is less clenched, the perineum more relaxed, and there is a subtle mobility at the base that did not exist when you began. These signs are not abstract. They are tangible and trackable, and they confirm that the Christmas ritual did what it was meant to do. It healed the trauma at the root by reorganizing defense at the base before the 24th day. To anchor this new state and be able to access it whenever you need, use the signal gesture of one hand over the lower abdomen. It can be done anywhere, discreetly, in 30 to 60 seconds. Simply place the palm a few centimeters below the navel. Apply gentle pressure. Breathe consciously toward the base for 3 or 4 cycles, and allow the body to recognize the settling. This simple touch reactivates the safety circuit you created now, reminding the nervous system that containment is no longer necessary. When you feel rigidity trying to return over the next few days, especially as Christmas approaches, do the following. Pause where you are. Place your hand on the lower abdomen. Breathe with the air directed toward the sacrum, and acknowledge internally that the cycle has already been closed, that the body knows how to return to settling, and that the base does not need to sustain old defense. Repeat this as many times as needed. The protocol is simple, but repetition teaches the body that the closure is real, and that somatic memory no longer needs to command presence. The seal is complete, and what you carry now is different from what you carried when you started watching this video. The base has settled, the sacrum has released defensive rigidity, and the old cycle has reached a real point of closure before the 24th day. This means that Christmas no longer has to be the stage where family traumas repeat automatically. You notice when contraction tries to return. You recognize the signal in the body before it turns into reactivity. And you have a concrete tool to reorganize defense at the root without needing to relive stories or process endless mental narratives. What changed is not only understanding, it is the somatic structure, the way the body sustains presence without triggering alarm. The Christmas ritual you have just applied is only the entry point to a much wider territory of somatic release and closure of inherited patterns. There are other layers of bodily memory waiting for resolution, other knots of containment that drain creative energy, other ancient defenses that can be dissolved when you know where to touch and how to breathe. Healing at the root does not end here. It deepens with each practice, with each cycle you consciously close. With each moment, the body recognizes that it can release without collapsing. As Clarice Lispector said, freedom is the space that pain once occupied. The space that sacral rigidity once filled is now available for presence, for creation, for a Christmas that finally fulfills its role of renewal rather than repetition. This freedom does not come from forgetting the past, but from reorganizing the base that held it as a living truth in the present. The body knows how to do this when the breath descends, when movement returns, when containment finds permission to dissolve. If this content resonated with you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. Share this video with someone you recognize who also arrives at Christmas with a locked body, carrying family memories that were never healed at the root. Consider becoming a channel member to support the creation of more deep practices that unite neuroscience and ancestral wisdom, and to help this knowledge reach more people who need it. Write in the comments, "I heal trauma at the root with the Christmas ritual before the 24th day." This statement marks in the outer world the inner transformation that took place in your sacrum, anchoring the practice in the body and creating a living testimony of real closure for others who still carry old defense. To continue this journey of somatic release and discover other techniques that dissolve inherited patterns where they truly lodge in the living tissue of the body, click the video appearing on the screen. The base that locked decades ago to protect you from the family field where the trauma was formed recognizes, for the first time, that it can release without collapsing. Christmas stops being repetition and becomes a passage where cycles finally end because the root allowed it.